God's decision. That is the message for today. Accepting God's will, God's plan, God's purpose, God's intentions for you. You see, we live in a world that everybody have their own plan. And when you continue to follow your plan, your will, your purpose, you will go shipwrecked. Ask the prodigal son. The prodigal son followed his own heart, his own mind. I want to be this, I want to be that. Until he realized that what he desired is not what God desired for him. It's not what his father desired for him. It is good to have good intention, personal intentions. But if it's not aligned to God's purpose for your life, you'll be in trouble. You'll be in big mess. All of us here, we have good intentions for ourselves, our children. But what is God's purpose and will? The prodigal son left home with, Father, give me, I want to be. Father, I want to be this, I want to be great. Then he traveled so far away until he realized that his intention is not good for him. That his father had good and better intention than what he had for himself. Then he spoke to himself. I want to go back home. I'm no more worthy to be called the son of my father. Let me be his servant. Let him train me to listen first of all to him. I'm not worthy. Let me go home. Let me go and meet my father and tell him that he should direct my step. His plan is better than my plan. His purpose is better than my purpose. His will is better than my will. Let me go back home. Many of us need to go back home to God. Many of us. Jesus in the book of Luke chapter 22 verse 42 said, Father, not as I will, not as I desire, but as you will. Let your will be done in my life. It is too hard for many people to follow the will of God for their lives. Because the will of God may not suit your will. May not align with your will, to your will. So, it is either you're operating in your will, in your purpose and plan, or you are following the will of God. There are two things there. You make up your mind. But Jesus said, I always do the thing that please my Father. As I see my Father do, that is what I do. It's too hard for people. Anything I see my Father say, do, act, that is what I do. How many people can live their life? We are living in a time of microwave, speed lane, just catch it. Anywhere you see it, you can just do it. But is that the will, the way, the purpose of God for us? The Bible is written to explain to us the will, the way, the purpose, and the plights of God. Are we ready to follow God's will? The Bible says in the book of Acts of the Apostles chapter 21, from verse 8 to verse 14. In verse 14, Paul was telling the people of Caesarea, he says, I'm going to die. There are a lot of prophecies that I'm going to die when I go to Jerusalem. They began to beg him. They said, Paul, please don't go to Jerusalem. Paul said, I'm not just ready to go to Jerusalem according to the will of God, according to the purpose of God, but I'm ready to die for what I believe. That is the will, the purpose, and the plan of God for me. They tried to dissuade him not to go to Jerusalem until after they could not. See what they said. When he will not be persuaded, we cease, saying, the will of the Lord be done in his life. Maybe you have a plan for your child, you have a plan for your husband, you have a plan for your wife, you have a plan for something, and God says, no, you better stop that thing, because God knows better than you. God does not start from the beginning, he always starts from the end. God knows the best. He sees more than you don't see. He knows more than you don't know. So it is better to follow his will and purpose than our will and purpose. What is the essence of you follow your will, you have the things of this world, and you disobey the purpose and the will of God? The will of God is always best, and it's always better for us. Jesus taught us in prayer how to ask for the will of God. He said, when you pray, say, our Father which is in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Then when he came to verse 10, he said, thy will be done. Many of us will recite that Jesus prayer that he taught the disciples. We always recite it. But when we come to thy will be done, how do you see that? Let the will of God be done in my life. Let what he originally planned concerning me, let it be. You see, when Jackson was ministering, he said something. God told Jeremiah, before you were born, I've written a note, a plan and a purpose for you. I sanctify you. You are a prophet to the nations. Maybe when Jeremiah came into the world, he saw that that is not what he wills, that he will suffer. Because God has already planned and proposed and said, you are my prophet. Before you were born, I know thee. I sanctify thee. I planned thee that you are a prophet. Any other thing that stands against that, you're on your own. Do you know that God has planned for your life? And since God has planned for me, why should I be trotting about, wandering up and down? All I need to do is to submit to his will, submit to his plan, submit to his purpose, and say, God, your will be done. I surrender to your will. I submit to your purpose in my life. Not what I planned, not what my father, my mother planned for me, not what any prophet planned, but your will be done. Sometimes the will of God in your life, you may not like it. You may not like it, but that is God's will. We came from God, we must follow his will. That is what, and God has no same will for everybody. His will for that man is different from his will from another person. All you need to do is to find out what is God's will for me. One of the worst things to do in life is to copy somebody's will. God don't have two people that are the same. God don't have that. Everybody in their lane. So you know the will of God for you, you follow it. And that is why all our children, they are not the same. God has will for individuals. This is my will for this. Don't try to mix them. Don't mix them. Allow God's will to be done in somebody's life. Some years ago, I went to somewhere to preach in Chicago, Southside Chicago. Before I left the hotel, God spoke to me. He said there's a young boy, 12 years, that is coming to the program. His name is Mike. I said, and what about him? He said, he's the one that will take over the ministry. I said, what? God, I don't know these people. I don't know them. So I went to the church. Before I preached, I said, God told me before I left the hotel that there's a young boy of 12 years old. His name is Michael. Where are you, Michael? Everybody were astounded. Michael? For some seconds, Michael was nowhere to be found. I don't even know whether there's anybody called, but God said it. I heard it. I know it, that God told me. As soon as I just look around, the woman of God that was sitting by me, very close to the altar, just smiled. She said, this God cannot lie. She looked at me and smiled. I said, Mama, what's going on there? He said, that is my grandson, Michael. He said, God have told me this many times, that my grandson will take over this ministry. The woman shouted, Michael, where are you? People, they started looking for Michael. Until they went to the music room. The boy was there assisting the person that was in the music room. They called him, such a very handsome boy. They brought him. I say, Mama, God said. There are pastors there. Pastors. Dignified people that were there. Pastors. Apostles. The woman just came and lied down. He said, God told me this. The woman has children. The woman has pastors. But God said, my will is this. That boy will take over the ministry. Let me tell you, the will of God does not go with our will. If you are following the will of man, you will forever be in trouble. Always say, Lord, let your will be done. God knows the best. I don't know. His will, they are mysterious. The will of God cannot be understood. The will of God cannot be defined. The will of God. If you can follow the will of God, can I tell you what? There may be mountains and valleys, some commas and full stop, but you will never regret. Because that is what God plans in his original purpose. You cannot follow the will of God and go shipwrecked. Never. There may be some problems and situations and conditions that may come on your way, but the will of God is always perfect. That is why Jesus taught to pray, let your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. The will of God in heaven is always been carried out. And if the will of God is done in the political world, if the will of God is done in the church today, you will stop hearing all those evil demonic prophecies from so many pastors. If the will of God is in the government, African politicians will stop duping the nations. Bad policemen will not be destroying the life of citizens. I can't breathe will not be heard again in the land. If the will of God is done, the church will be refined. The will of God. Let the will of God be done. This is what everyone should always pray. God, your will for my children. A father came to me and said, I want all my children. This is going to be a lawyer. This will be an engineer. This will be this. I say, you are making a mistake. Pray for the will of God. When the will of God is in their life, they will stop jumping from this course to this course, from this profession to this profession. I just allow the will of God for them to be done. Don't suggest. Say, God, lead them. David said, the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. If God will lead you, you shall not want. He will make you to lie down in green pastures. He will restore your soul. He will lead you in path of righteousness for his name's sake. Yet though you walk through the valley of the shadow of death and destruction, in the valley of Baca, you shall not be put to shame. The Bible says, they that trust in the Lord shall be like Mount Zion, that cannot be removed. Are you following the will of God? Stop following the will of man. If the will of God is being actualized today, we will not suffer the way we are suffering. In the political world, everywhere you go, people are objecting against the will of God, fighting against the will of God. When God says something, people say no. That's what is going on in the world today. There were 3 Hebrew boys that learned about the will of God. They knew about the will of God. They know what God told them from the laws. Now they were carried away because of the sin of the land into a strange land. When they get over there, they come to see that the will of the king, called Nebuchadnezzar, was being done. The leadership of the land, the king Nebuchadnezzar, wanted to establish a state religion. State religion is when the government says this is what should happen, and everybody have to obey the government. The state religion is everybody must bow down to this. In the book of Daniel chapter 3 verse 1. The Bible says that Nebuchadnezzar made a god, an image that everybody should worship. But the question is that the will of God? Before you do what you do with people, ask yourself, is this the will of God for my life? You can stand alone in the midst of many, many people and say, if I be a man and a child of God, I will follow the will of God. You will see that God will support you. The will of God is always standing with people that follows it. Are you standing for the will of God? Nebuchadnezzar the king, who made him the king? Is it not God? The kingdom is the Lord. He raised up kings, he dethroned kings. Who God says will rule, shall rule. God in his infinite mercy raised up Nebuchadnezzar to be the king of Babylon. Then he's messing up that opportunity. Many of us, God give us opportunity for a position or for something, you mess it up. Don't blame God when you mess up your position. He molded image of gold whose height was 60 cubits and the breadth thereof was 6 cubits. And he set it up in the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. He now said, oh, you men and women, president and governors, administrators, you must bow down to this image. But among them were 3 people that knew the will of God, that knew what God told them. I don't care who is talking to you. Outside what God said, that person is lying. They have learned from the law. They have learned from the Pentateuch. Thou shalt not bow down before any graven image. In the laws of God, in the purpose of God. In Exodus chapter number 20. Thou shalt not worship them. Thou shalt not follow them. Thou shalt not serve them, because The will of God must be done. Now, if it's some people, they will say, at least every other person is doing it, let us just do it. Is it not just to bow heads? But they said no. We will follow the will of God. And let me tell somebody, when you are following the will of God, it may not be easy for you. It might not be easy. You might be thrown into jail. They may kill you. The will of God is rocky, very, very rocky. It's full of thorns. It's full of questions. It's full of misunderstanding. It's full of stop signs, roadblocks. It's full of troubles. But if only you will follow it. The Bible says, many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord will deliver them from it all. Follow the will of God, you will see God deliverance. Follow the will of God, you will see the voice of God speaking for you. Follow the will of God, you will see the purpose of God being manifested positively for you. Follow the will of God. The will of God is always perfect. The will of God is always wonderful. But to the ordinary man is difficult. These three young men said together, we cannot. We will not. We have never done it before, and we cannot do it. There was a lady that came to us some years ago. She was the one teaching our children here in the church at the back. The husband is a typical unbeliever. And two of them were posted out of America to Abidjan. The husband was representing the government there. The husband goes to voodoo. And this lady is a pastor's child that served the Lord. Grew up in the way, in the will, and the purpose of God. And that is why I advise people, if you are a child of God, be careful to who you marry. Be careful. You are a child of God, be very careful to who you mingle with. Because who you mingle with will tangle you, may destroy your life. How can a child of the living God descend so low to marry a child of the devil? What an insult. She did not look well. Or maybe she was enticed because of handsomeness or because of money. But she made a mistake. Many of us have made terrible mistakes. In marriage, in business, and in so many things. We need to return back to God and say, God, we are sorry. So she followed her husband with some of her children. They went to Abidjan. One day the husband said, my wife, I know you go to church, but I want us to go to one traditional native doctor. Because there is something I want to find out. And the native doctor said I should come with you. The lady could not sleep at night. She cried to God and said, God, I have known you. I was born in a Christian home. I grew up as a child of God. I'm in a strange land. My husband is taking me to a native doctor. He said, Lord, I cannot leave the God I know to the God I don't know. That is the story of the woman, which applies to Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego. They said, King, we cannot leave the God of heaven, the God that created the moon, the sun, and the stars, the God that told my forefathers we should not bow before any graven image. We cannot leave that God to serve your image. We are sorry, we can't do that. We cannot. They made up their mind and said, we cannot. In Daniel chapter 3 verse 12, They said, we cannot do that. We are sorry. Oh, king, we can obey you in any situation, in any condition. But for us to bow down to graven image, that is a no-no. They came to report them and said, there are certain Jews that are set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, do you know that some people are looking for you to report you to the devil? He said they have no regard for thee. They serve not your God. They will not follow what your instruction, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. If there is anything you are going to face, there are people that will report you. That was one of the greatest problems of Jeremiah. Anything Jeremiah do, they will tell him, Jeremiah, say anything, we will go and report you. In fact, his family will tell him, we'll go and report you. Some people will report us to the witches and wizards. They will report us to the government. They will report us to different. I know of somebody in this land. His greatest problem has been his people. All they do is to call immigration for him and report him to the immigration. People have to be very careful. No matter your offense, be careful who you call immigration and police for. That is the highest level of anger and offense. People calling immigration for you. People writing petitions against you. Those people don't want you alive. Anything written to the immigration can almost be impossible. Will almost be impossible to be reversed. Because it will be in your file. This brother went through this until he was deported. What a brother can do to a brother. What a sister can do to a sister. What a friend can do to a friend. Another woman in this land was threatened because of the same thing. They said, we call immigration. What? The same thing happened in the life of Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego. They went and reported to the king and told the king, "O king, there are 3 boys here. You are the one that put them in the hierarchy, in the government of this nation. They don't regard you. They are wicked. They are mean. They don't bow down to the image." They don't do that. Then in verse 15, then the king have to give his sentence. "O Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego, now if it be truly that at the time that you hear the sound of the cornet and the harp and the flutes and the psalmboy and the psalm trees and the dulcimer and all kinds of music, you shall fall down and worship the image which I have made. Well, this is a second chance. Well, you must do it in my presence. Well, if you worship not, you shall be cast into the same hour into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. I'm giving you a second chance. I did not just try to believe what they told me, but I want it to be real here. I'm giving you a second chance. And who is that God? This is the one that offended me. Who is that God that shall deliver you out of my hands? The same thing Pharaoh said that offended God. Pharaoh said in the book of Exodus chapter 5 verse 2, who is God? Huh? It's just like somebody saying, who is your father? Who are you? You want to provoke a man. You want to ask the person, who are you? Then he will prove who he is. Who are you? Pharaoh asks Moses, who is God? Sennacherib asks Hezekiah, who is God? See Nebuchadnezzar repeating the same thing. Why is it that when people are lifted up, they begin to fight against God? Nebuchadnezzar here asks, who is that God that will deliver you from my hands? That means you are in my hands. You are in my court. I'm going to kill you. I will throw you into the fire. When the wicked are thinking you are in their hands, they don't know that you are not in their hands. Your soul is not in their hands. Your life is not in their hands. Your destiny is not in the hand of any. If you don't know that, just know it now. I'm telling you. Nobody have ability to destroy your life. Jesus told the disciples, he said, don't fear them that can kill. Don't fear them that they think they can destroy you. He said, nobody can destroy you. Your life is in the hand of my Father. In the book of John 10, he said, no man will be able to take you away from my Father's hands. My Father that gave you to me is bigger than all. And I want to tell somebody, no power, no authority can destroy you. Is somebody hearing me? No power, no might, no stronghold can destroy you. He now told Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, I give you second chance. I give you second chance. You don't obey me, then you are in trouble. Nobody will deliver you. Nobody can save you. Nobody. Then what happened? Let us see what Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego told the king. In verse 16, 17, and 18. Look at what they said. Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego answered and said to the king, oh! When you are calling somebody, first of all put oh. It that means I'm sorry for you. Oh! Nebuchadnezzar. They did not respect him again. They did not say, oh king. They now stripped away the kingship from him because they are belittling God. Because he was belittling God. Oh, Nebuchadnezzar. I believe when they were saying it, they were shaking their heads. Head of, I pity you. You have used your foul, crooked, coerced language against my God. Oh, Nebuchadnezzar. We are not careful. That means, in this regard, since you are belittling our God, we don't care the way we talk to you now. We are not careful to answer you in this matter. It is a fire for fire. You talk about our God, we are ready to ridicule you and spoil you here. Even in the presence of so many presidents and prime ministers and police officers and immigration officers, look at these strangers in a strange land talking to a king, shaking their head to tell him, oh king, we pity you. Why? Because that Nebuchadnezzar put his hand in the wrong place, talking against God. Who is that God that will deliver you? In verse 17, if it is so, that is, if you mean business. If it is so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us. God is able. Can I hear God is able? Somebody say God is able. Somebody say God is able. The Bible says in the book of Ephesians 3 verse 20, he that is able to do exceeding abundantly above all that we ask or think. God is able to make all grace abound. God is able to deliver us. God is able, abundantly able to save us. He is able. He will deliver us from your fire. He will deliver us from your plan and wickedness. The God we serve is able to release us from your evil plans. Our God will. Our God is well able. He will deliver us out of thy hand. Oh, we don't respect you, oh King. We give you a little respect. Our God can do something in your presence. Let me tell somebody something. When you are pushed to the corner, don't deny God. When situation says no, don't curse God. When you come to a place of no way, you don't know where to turn to, don't renounce God. My God is able. Abundantly able, well able. He can do it. He did it before. He will still do it again. In verse number 18, that is where the matter is. But if not. But if not means, even though he made up his mind, God made up his mind to deliver us. That means God decides not to deliver us from your fire. He has a better plan for us. Let me tell somebody something. You are following something, and that thing, you come to a stop sign. You come to the end of the road. You don't know where to go. You say, oh God, the road is finished. God said, I make a way where there seems to be nowhere. I have been there many times. When the road is closed, everybody runs away. Situation says there is no way. I've been there so many times. God will say, watch me. That is why I love Hebrews chapter 12 verse 1. Looking unto Jesus, the author and the finisher of my faith, who for the joy that was set before him, he endured the cross, despising the shame, and for so he's lifted and set at the right hand of the Father. Even though God decides not to save us, Daniel 3 verse 18. Even though God says, no, I'm not going to deliver you people. If not, be it known unto you, O king, that we will not. Let God made up his mind he's not going to save us. We have decided. They did not say, I have decided. They had a common voice. That's what God needs from the church. We will not. We will not serve thy God, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set. We can't do that. Let me tell you, that is where we come to a situation in life where your decision matters. Do you know, many of us are serving God. I'm a child of God. I'm a child of God. But there is a place you get to where your faith is tried. That is when you know the level of your Christianity. When the doctor will tell you nothing we can do, that is when you know your faith. When the doctor with somebody called me that was facing bankruptcy. He said, man of God, pray for me. He said, I have 2 cars, I have this, I have that. And my lawyer have told me that they will not grant me bankruptcy favor. What do I do? And tomorrow I'm going to Mia. I said, we have no answer for you until between now and tomorrow. I always have time so that I will pray. I do what Daniel did. Daniel told her, Sarah, give me time. I said, allow me to have time. God is a God that can change people's hearts. People's minds. So I told him I will call you in the morning. When are you going to the court? He just told me, he says by 9 o'clock. So I will leave by 9, by 10 o'clock I should be there. And they will bring the sentence. I said, okay. I said, I will call you by 8:30. Let me hear what we say. So early in the morning, I carried my Bible. I was reading my Bible. I get to the book of Jude 12. God said, I disappoint the counsel of them that make decision. I said, God, say it again. He said, I am the Lord that disappoint and turn away the counsel and the purpose and the plan and the sentence of them that make laws. Wow! And the thing clicked into my spirit. I said, Lord, is it the answer to your daughter? God said, that answer. Call her quick. I called the daughter of God. I said, God says that he has taken away their sentence. He have confounded them and they are going to release you. You have no problem. He said, but what about my house? What about? I said, God says. Somebody say, God says. I did not hear you. Say, God says. If God has spoken and God has said it, forget about what other people are saying. I love the book of Romans chapter 8. From verse 28. He said, what shall we say to these things? What shall we say to these things? If God be for me, who shall be against me? If God is on your side, any other decision made by any hierarchy shall be destroyed. That is what God tells me. Let them make that decision. Let them plan it. Let them meet in the courtroom. Let them meet in any situation. Let them meet in any court. Let them meet anywhere. But when God is involved in your case, you will be triumphant. Did somebody hear what I said? Did you hear what I said? If God is in your case. The Bible says, who shall lay any charge against God's elect? He said, it is God that justifies. It is not what men say. It is God that justifies. Who is he that will condemn you? It is Christ that died on the cross and is seated at the right hand of the Father in majesty. Who is he that will say a thing according to lamentation? And it come to pass when the Lord have not said it. It is God's decision that is final. I accept God's decision in my life. The mountain may be so high, the valley may be so low. The tempest may be so fierce. The voice of man may be so bad. But I believe the Lord. I accept what he says, not what man says. Once God says it, I'm okay with it. Once God says, you go here. There may be angst, there may be problem, there may be opposition, there may be confusion there, but God says, you go there. His word is his will and purpose and desire for me. Before he said, go there, he has already planned a way of escape for me. That is the way he acts. That is why Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego, they told the king, we are sorry for you. We are not bowing down to your God. We are not going to listen to you in this case. Our God, even though he did not deliver us, he has another way for us. And that is how God operates. If God tells you, maybe here is closed, he has already opened other doors. All you need to do is go and meet him and tell him, Lord, where is the other door? That's what he does. Isaiah 43, verse 19-20 is always there. God, make way where there is no way. I open rivers in the desert. I command blessings to flow where there is. That is how Dubai was founded. They were looking for water. They found gold. That's Dubai. In the desert. Oh God, we are looking for this. They found gold. Listen to me. God is going to open a door. Is somebody hearing what I'm saying? A place where your friends have rejected you, they push you away, they say you can't make it, people renounce you, your company said no, everything says no way. Wait for God. You will see God in action. Is somebody hearing what I'm saying? I better accept the will of God than the will of man. The will of man will always have shipwreck and headlong and nose drive. But the will of God is always successful. Lift up your hand. Somebody say, I follow the will of God. Say it louder. Say, I. Say it again. Say, I. Say it again. Say, I. Say, I accept the will of God. Accept the plan of God. Accept the purpose of God. Accept what God says about my life. What he says is what I believe. I don't believe any other thing. I believe what the Lord has said. I love that song that people sang today. Come and see what the Lord has done. Let me tell you, if God tells you anything, don't doubt him. Just accept it and say, God, who am I to doubt you? If God wake up in the morning, if you wake up in the morning and God says, You do this, you do this, you do this. And the thing doesn't look, you say, God, what are these things? Let me tell you, the will of God doesn't look palatable. It doesn't suit human mind. How can you tell me this? Like a young man that was in his postgraduate course was trying to finish up, and God told him, don't go back to school. Excuse me, God. God said, don't go back. He looks so stupid. Let me tell you, what God says does not make sense. I say it again. What God says does not make sense. That's why the Bible says the just shall live by faith. Faith does not make sense. What makes sense is my breathing, my seeing, my smelling, my feeling, my five senses. But when God says something, it stands against your senses. It doesn't make sense. The mother and the father of the young man called him. He said, this is your postgraduate course, and you are finishing up. But God told him, don't. The father and the mother called him. They said, we know that the hand of God is upon you. And God is going to use you. Please, just go back. Just do this course now. He said, how many months? Then you'll come back. Don't try God. I don't know who I'm talking to. Did you hear what I said? What did I say? Don't try God. When he decides, he does not meet anybody for opinion. No. He's a government, and his government is upon his shoulder. He decides what he wants to do. He does all things according to his own counsel. He does not ask for opinion and suggestion. He will just say, God, I have decided. One day, God just said, Moses, go to the mountain and die. Moses said, but I've been following you. Let come. Daddy, come, please. Let us talk this matter. When did this one happen? He said, I just make up my mind. Go and die. Oh, please, God. Can I enter the land, please? God said, the only permission I can, just climb on top of that mountain and see the land. You are not entering there. But when did you make up your mind? He said, I just made up my mind. When God make up his mind, don't argue. Just say, Lord, let your will. Say it again. Let your will. Say it again. What did I say? Let your will be. Lift up your hand, somebody. Say, Lord, not the will of the devil. Say, not the will of man. Say, not my own will. Say, oh Lord, let the will of God be done. Say, Lord, again, Lord, let your will be done in my life, in this land, in my business, in my life, wherever I go. Say it louder, Lord, let your will be done. Somebody stand up, let me pray for you. Thy will be done. Thy will be done. Thy will be done, Jesus. Thy will be done. Thy will be done, Daddy. Thy will be done.